Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Choi for Arirang News. We begin in Brisbane today. The leaders of the group of 20 nations finalized a plan to raise collective economic growth 2% above trend over the next 5 years. Amid the excitement, Korea made a major contribution to the proceedings. Our Choi You-sun reports from Brisbane.
The Korean government's 3-year economic innovation plan has been hailed at the G20 summit in Australia. The plan aims to spur growth and expand the job market through social reforms, deregulation, and support for the creative industries.
Korea's expected GDP growth, as based on the 3-year economic innovation plan, was found to be the highest among the G20 nations.
While predicting the G20's combined GDP could expand 2.1% from the current trend in 2018, given that their submitted strategies are carried out, the IMF and the OECD, which assess the strategies, said Korea's GDP could grow 4.4%. In fact, key policies in Korea's plan have been included in the Brisbane Action Plan. In addition to overcoming low growth, another main theme at this year's G20 was how to achieve global economic resilience. In line with this, President Park Geun-hye called on developed nations to be more careful when adjusting their currency policies, as that could have a negative effect on emerging economies.
The president said that developed nations' policies that only consider the domestic economy could lead to a negative spillover in emerging economies, and this in return could spill back into the advanced economies.
This was thought to have been the Korean president's indirect way of raising concerns about the depreciation of the Japanese yen. Although unable to unite around one policy on the matter, the G20 member countries have agreed to monitor the spillover and discourage currency devaluation for the sake of competitiveness. Having promoted her security and economic policies and highlighted Korea's global contributions, President Park will wrap up her 3-nation tour and return home on Monday. Choi You-sun, Arirang News, Brisbane.
Well, the next host of the G20 summit has been decided. In 2016, it will be China. The announcement was made by Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott in Brisbane on Sunday. China is trying to find its place in the new configuration of global powers, hosting the G20, a major platform for dialogue and coordination between developed and developing nations, is a good choice. North Korea's senior Communist Party official Choi You-sun will embark on a week-long trip to Russia on Monday as a special envoy for the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un. Choi is expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The two will likely discuss their countries' bilateral ties and ways to strengthen economic cooperation. The move is widely seen as a means for the North to cozy up with Russia. It could also be a precursor to a visit by the North Korean leader, as Pyongyang's ties with China have deteriorated. Choi is also expected to ask for Russia's cooperation to bar the UN Security Council from passing a resolution on the North's human rights situation. The North Korean special envoy is also scheduled to visit cities in eastern Russia. The National Assembly was abuzz with activity today as Korea's rival parties began consideration of next year's budget proposal. Will they be able to get through the negotiations and pass the proposal by the November 30th deadline? Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
The National Assembly's Budget Committee began a review of the $340 billion budget for 2015 on Sunday. It is rare for the Budget Committee to meet on Sunday, which demonstrates lawmakers' resolve to pass the budget bill by the November 30th deadline. But it won't be easy. The rival parties are expected to clash over a number of contentious issues, including money for welfare programs, and in particular, a plan to offer free childcare, as well as funds for the President's Creative Economy Initiative. While the ruling Saenuri Party will look to keep the allocation for the Creative Economy Initiative intact, along with measures to boost the nation's economy, the opposition will be aiming to make cuts worth of some $4.5 billion to those initiatives and allocate more for welfare programs. under a law revision passed last year, if lawmakers fail to reach agreement on the budget bill by the end of November, the draft proposal without changes will automatically be submitted for a vote to the full parliament on December 1st. Although both camps have vowed to meet the November 30 deadline, it remains to be seen whether they can do it without running into any major obstacles. Lawmakers have passed the budget on time only 6 times in the nation's parliamentary history. 박지원, Arirang News.
153 Korean companies in China were asked what kind of impact the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement will have in their businesses. 78.4% said they expect positive, if not very positive, effects. According to the poll conducted by Kotra, 56.2% of respondents said the FTA will improve conditions for the supply of raw materials and parts. More than 60% of the companies said the tariff removal under the deal will sharpen their price competitiveness. Unfortunately, more than half the companies polled said the deal will not contribute to an increase in their productivity of finished goods, awareness of their products and brand, or help improve their distribution system in China. Koreans now have a wider selection of fruit to choose from in their local markets. Good news for consumers about a change that could spell trouble for local producers. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Fruits of all shapes and sizes from all over the world can now be seen at local supermarkets here in Korea, meaning consumers have a wider range of products to choose from. These include the more conventional fruits like bananas, grapes, and oranges, to less common varieties such as grapefruit, papayas, and dragon fruit.
The fruits at this local supermarket are all fresh and cheap. I don't distinguish between whether they're imported or local.
According to local supermarket data, the market share of imported fruit is growing, rising to nearly 40% so far this year. When we break it down into months, imported fruit accounted for over 45% of the local fruit market in February, and imports even surpassed local fruit in April. The most popular fruits were bananas, grapes, oranges, cherries, and kiwis. Other fruits like blueberries and melons have also seen a huge surge in sales.
The variety and quantity of imported fruit has jumped significantly. They're also relatively inexpensive, so many consumers are choosing them.
One of the reasons for the rise in the popularity of imported fruits, in addition to the variety, is that people's perceptions about imported food are changing. And what all of this means for local fruit producers is that they're facing some tough competition that's not likely to die down anytime soon. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Monday, November 17 is when Hong Kong-Shanghai Stock Link will be launched. From that point on, international investors will be able to trade Shanghai-listed shares on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, while mainland investors can trade Hong Kong-listed shares via the Shanghai Stock Exchange. China will exempt taxes on profits made from the landmark scheme for now, but will make changes to tax foreign investors at a later date. Some analysts remain optimistic that the experiment has the potential to create the world's third-largest stock market. Others fear implementation of the stock connection could be problematic as China and Hong Kong operate under different legal and tax regimes. Islamic State militants on Sunday released yet another video that appears to show the murder of an American hostage. The clip shows a masked man with a decapitated head covered in blood, which he says is Peter Kessig. Kessig, a former soldier, was captured by militants in Syria last year in October while working for charity groups in Lebanon and Syria. The video also shows several other men being beheaded. The U.S. says it's working to determine the authenticity of the video. British Prime Minister David Cameron said he was horrified by the cold-blooded murder, adding that Britain's Foreign Office was analyzing the video. Radioactive material from the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster have been detected in waters off the coast of California. The U.S.-based Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution said earlier this week that it had detected tiny amounts of cesium-134 and other radioactive materials from the plant meltdown in seawater samples taken some 160 kilometers off the Northern California coast. The institute says the elements detected are at safe levels of less than 2 becquerels per cubic meter of water, posing no health hazard to humans and underwater life. The amount is about 1,000 times lower than those set for drinking water by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. There could be some good news on the horizon for millions of animals that have to suffer from animal testing for the sake of human beings. Researchers in the U.S. have discovered what could be an alternative to the process that could not only reduce animal deaths, but also make testing more accurate. Our Kwon So-hwa has the details.
It's a common sight at laboratories. Mice, cute rabbits, as well as one of mankind's best friend, the dog. More than 100 million animals worldwide become victims of experiments for humans. But in many cases, test results are not that accurate since animals have different structures, functions, and metabolisms.
One of the things that pharmaceutical industry is finding is that they're having very high failure rates, and often it's because the animal models being used to develop these drugs are not predictive of the human situation.
That's why it is essential to experiment with tissue as similar to the human body as possible. To do that, a research team at the Wyss Institute for Biologically Inspired Engineering at Harvard University planted human organ cells onto a thumb-sized chip.
This is the idea of replacing animal studies for drug testing, for example, with little micro-engineered devices that are lined by human cells and reconstitute organ-level function.
The researchers created a thin membrane with a hole in it and implanted lung cells on top of it and vessels beneath it, giving the chip channels for oxygen and blood to flow and making the chip mimic a lung's breathing movements.
This institute is by far the greatest and best working environment for bioengineering research, and we can predict the behavior or response of these cells or the body to, for example, drugs more precisely.
The research team also succeeded in kidneys on a chip, bone marrow on a chip, and heart on a chip. And they say these chips could not only significantly reduce animal deaths, but also signal large cuts in future costs and time needed to produce new drugs. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
And now the weather. If you're in Korea on Monday, do dress warm in the morning because the daytime lows will be a couple of degrees Celsius lower than Sunday morning. And now let's check out the weather conditions elsewhere around the globe. And that's all from us. Thank you for watching. Have a great start to your week.